from COP30 in Berlin, broadcast by We Don't Have Time in partnership with the Nature Positive Initiative. And this is a series where we delve into the interconnectivity between the nature and climate crises and how tackling them together is the foundation to secure equitable prosperity and well-being through the nature positive transition. I'm Gemma Parkes, Head of Communications for the Nature Positive Initiative, and I'm moderating this session today. So welcome to our first panel, which is on Becoming Nature Positive, How It All Began, where we're going to reflect on the journey that led to the adoption of the Global Biodiversity Framework and its nature positive mission of halting and reversing nature loss, reflect on where we are in the midpoint towards 2030 and what we need to do to accelerate implementation. I'm joined today by a fantastic panel. We have Patricia Zurita, who's Chief Strategy Officer of Conservation International. Welcome, Patricia. In just one moment, we're going to be joined by Eduardo Correa, former Minister of the Environment for Colombia. And I also have to my left, Marco Lambertini, who's convener of the Nature Positive Initiative. Marco, I'm going to start with you first. So briefly, could you perhaps share a little bit of your recollections of the genesis of the nature positive concept, all the concerted efforts that led up to the Convention on Biological Diversity COP15 achievement, and maybe some key milestones along that journey that really stand out to you?
Yeah, thank you, Gemma. Welcome, everybody, to this nature positive dialogue. So how it all began? I think for me, it all began with the Paris Agreement. The 12 December of 2015, COP21, climate COP21. And when the gavel hit, and I remember the President Fabius declaring the Paris Agreement adopted, was a very emotional moment for the climate agenda. But for us that also focused on the nature agenda was equally exciting because it was actually giving us the confidence that the world would agree on a global goal that unites efforts, that really drives coherent action towards a common shared direction and goal. And so then the question was, wait a minute, we don't have a global goal for nature. and we know that nature is so fundamental also for the delivery of the climate agenda and much more. So for me, the thinking about the need of a global goal started there. And I know for many other leaders, and Patricia will speak in a minute, was the same. And so in the years following Paris, we started to think what that global goal could look like, but also how can we get it adopted? And of course, the great opportunity was the approaching UN CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, the Nature Convention, that was about to be convened to agree on the next 10 years plan for biodiversity. So we thought that's the opportunity to codify, to embed a global goal for nature. We started talking then what the global goal looked like, and the whole community gathered together, and it was clear that if for climate carbon neutral, net zero emissions was the right direction. For nature, net zero was not good enough. And simply because nature can recover, has an incredible ability to regenerate and recover if we give it a chance. And so the idea was to be more ambitious and really embrace a net positive, a nature positive goal. We coalesced. It was amazing. I mean, I'm looking to Patricia because she was one of the driving forces together with many others. You know, it was amazing because suddenly nature rose at the top of the political agenda. We gathered 91 head of states asking for a global goal for nature, supporting nature positive. The G7 declaration said net zero is not enough. We need nature positive. Hundreds of civil society organizations, hundreds of companies, particularly helped by organizations like the World Economic Forum. So, I mean, it was an incredible gathering of new actors around the idea of a global goal for nature. And that was where it all began. And amazingly, 7 years and 7 days later, on the 19th of December 2022 in Montreal, under the Chinese presidency, the gavel went down again. This amazing global biodiversity framework and the mission with a global goal for nature, halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030, the definition of nature positive, was adopted. So I stopped there because then we talk about what next. But
amazing.
It was an amazing experience. To say probably the most extraordinary experience of high-level policy in my life. And I don't know if you, Patricia, agree, but what really was heartening, truly heartening, is that we were all able, I was the head of WWF at the time, Patricia was the head of BirdLife. We all were able to set aside our brands and really work together for this common ambitious goal. But
yes, absolutely. And it sounds like multi-sectoral momentum and energy moving towards this wonderful moment and achievement for nature. Patricia, I'm going to turn to you. Perhaps you could share a little bit of how you experienced from a civil society perspective. Before I come to you, Guy, I'm going to just welcome and introduce again former Minister of the Environment for Colombia, Carlos Eduardo Correa.
who knows, maybe the new minister as well one day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So happy to be here.
Thank you.
Dear friend Marco, with you and with Patricia.
Oh,
Very much.
Very welcome, and thanks for joining us. We know that there are many parallel commitments here in Belém. It's a very, very busy week, so thanks for making time. We've just heard from Marco a little bit of the general scene setting of the genesis and how Nature Positive came to be. Before I turn to you, Carlos, I'm just going to ask Patricia, so what was your experience, please, from a civil society perspective of really engaging deeply in the Nature Positive process?
Yeah, so as Marco said, I was the head of BirdLife at that point. We were in Sharm el Sheikh at COP30 at that point. Coming, and I remember, I don't know if you remember, but we had this meeting at one of the hotels in Sharm el Sheikh in a very long meeting room. And it was like 6 of us. And at that point, it was Marco, myself, Christian Samper, who was at WCS. We were trying to get Jen from the Nature Conservancy and trying to get the big conservation organizations together so we can start with that element of we can do this together. We can get to a similar Paris moment, we were calling it at that time, for nature. But it was not easy, right? As Marco said, we had to check out all of the egos and the individuality of each of the organizations to really come and say, we're all fighting for the same thing. We want this to happen for all of us and for the planet. So let's make it happen as a community. And then we started looking into this cannot be only the civil society organizations. We need to bring in the private sector. We need to bring in the governments. We need to make a big coalition. And then the pandemic hit and it stalled everything and delayed the new COP. So we were like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do and how are we going to make it happen? And I have to give credit to Marco because he was the engine of pushing this. We crafted the idea together in Sharm el Sheikh, but we moved it. He moved it together and pushed the energy to make all of what has happened since then be real. And the moment, as he said, in Montreal was beyond emotional. You know, we were really celebrating that for the first time, we were really having a common goal and we were fighting for it together. So now we have to make it happen.
Absolutely. It was really all shoulders to the wheel to bring about this Paris moment nature. Carlos, I'm going to come to you. I'd love to hear a little bit from you. If you could share how the concept of Nature Positive was embraced by Colombia, and perhaps say a few words about the value case for nature from a Global South perspective.
Well, I was just, listening to Patricia now. And, well, I remember Sharm el Sheikh when I was just talking to Patricia about birds. Remember, Patricia? But, one of my first meeting at COP26 in Glasgow was with Marco. So I remember I went to this room and started talking about our NDCs because we were announcing our new NDCs at 2020 was 51% of reduction for the emissions. It was so, challenging doing that. And then at Glasgow, Marco came to the Colombian pavilion and said, what is that? It was a huge message on the wall that said, carbon neutral, nature positive. So that was the challenge that we had at the Colombian government at that time. And I was so excited because a lot of people like Marco, like Patricia, so many other friends, Goldsmith, SAG, the Arhuacos, the indigenous communities, they were so committed, to the challenge. To take care of nature, to stop deforestation, to protect biodiversity, but also to cut emissions at that time. And well, it was amazing. After 2020, when we had this hurricane in San Andres and Providencia in Colombia, we learned a lot about nature positive, about restoring mangrove ecosystem, about planting 1 million corals at that time, about recovering all the dry forest and to stop deforestation. So that's, that started in 2020 with President Duque, talking about biodiversity, talking about nature positive communities and countries. And I think that now, 5 years after COP26, we're still talking about this. I was just looking and reading the message, Marco. You said, we don't have time. And I just remember something. At COP26 in Glasgow, we made several announcements from the government. One was our NDCs, 51%. The other one was the Eastern Pacific Corridor with Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, and Colombia. And the other one was to protect the 30 by 30% of our oceans and terrestrial areas. And then at that time, we announced that Colombian government would do it before 2030. 1 year later, in Lisbon, in UNOC too, we announced it. We did it. And we don't have time. It just reminds me about the 30 before 30. We have to do it before. We have to be carbon neutral, nature positive before the 2030.
Absolutely. And it's true. We don't have a lot of time. It's a very ambitious goal to achieve nature positive. Perhaps could you all just share a few comments on where are things at today? Marco, who wants to go first?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we have to be hopeful. Yeah. I mean, I just actually finished with my comms team a quote that we're putting out to the media. We just started the negotiation yesterday. We have an agenda that has been approved. That is almost a first in many of the negotiations that we have had. We are claiming for ambition. We still have to close the financial gap. We're hoping that TFFF becomes a thing at the end of the COP. But while we have some of these signals and signs of the broader sector, we have indigenous peoples here, we have Afro-descendants, we have local communities, we have even so many representatives from the religious groups. We are coalescing, as Marco said, as one community. I think what we need to do is make sure that we remember that we don't have time, that it is urgent, that we cannot be whittling on the language and just trying to wordsmith everything, that we need action, and that for action to happen, we need funding, and that finance has to be on the table. Finance has to remember that nature is 30% of the solution. And that will bring in not only climate benefits, but it will bring many other benefits for local communities and for the rest of the planet. I mean, at the end of the day, more than 50% of the GDP depends on nature. So let's think about not only the climate risk that we are living and that we're posing on the economy, but think about the wealth that we derive from nature and how important it is for us to start connecting these agendas, putting the money on the table so we can make action happen. So I would say optimistic. We have to be optimistic. I think we are bringing the agenda of climate and nature closer together, although the negotiation of Article 4.6 could potentially tell you that we're not that close. I think we can make the effort and we can demonstrate the benefits. And I think we are going to be able to come at the end of the COP with good news. I'm hopeful that that will happen.
I think we always need to be optimistic and hopeful, otherwise we wouldn't all be here. And as we're speaking now, we can hear a tremendous rainstorm falling on the COP30 venue. It feels like such a privilege to be sitting as we are right beside the Amazon rainforest.
We are in the rainforest after all. So people cannot be surprised that we have rain. And it is good that it's still a forest and that it's still raining.
It's beautiful. It actually gives me goosebumps to feel the rain.
No, look, this is important. We shouldn't take this for granted because to your point about where are we, I think the whole nature positive concept, ambition, but particularly goal, because nature positive is not a slogan, it's a measurable goal. It's a goal that is action at scale. Not any action, but action that really is commensurate to actually achieving a future with more nature, not less. That's the simple definition of nature positive. We need a world, we need a future where we stop the decline of nature, we halt and we reverse it, allowing nature to recover, so that we have more nature, not less. For the reasons that Patricia mentioned, because I think the new dimension that has emerged, I think really in the last 5 to 10 years max, is that we are beginning to look at nature as an absolute essential dimension for our future. And that's not hasn't been like that until very recently. We're beginning to understand the material value of nature. Of course, the spiritual, the aesthetic, the intrinsic, I feel very strongly personally about all that. But at the end of the day, if we don't realize that we need to stop taking nature for granted, that we need to stop utilizing nature life if it was unlimited and a free input in our economy, if we stop ignoring the externalities of destroying nature and the impacts on not just nature itself, but actually on our own security in terms of water security, climate security, health, we will continue to destroy, hoping for the best. And we know now, and science is super clear, that actually, if we don't take care of the natural systems, the stability of ecosystem, biodiversity, it's the engine for this ecosystem to work, we will pay a dear price.
We're really in trouble.
Yeah, so that's a really new paradigm. And I think the whole nature positive discussion has triggered. And what is super exciting is to see, particularly, I would say, the corporate sector paying attention to nature like never before. I think nature and biodiversity has never been higher in the corporate agenda because of that dimension, because they're beginning to see nature destabilization as much as climate destabilization as a risk.
Absolutely.
To the economy, to the business, as a risk to society. And that's one important dimension. And then there is the opportunity dimension, because by embracing new ways of developing, by embracing new way of running the economy, new way of running our own lives, we can actually embrace new model, new market, create new markets, develop new products. So the challenge for us, I think, and I stop here, is to actually define, describe a nature positive future as a better future for people, not just for nature. And the people positive and nature positive link is the one that we need to emphasize more. And that's what it is. Explain a bit of subtle publicity, explain in the book that all of us contributed to, by the way, the three of us and many others. So becoming nature positive, free online, who wants to read it?
Definitely. We don't have time to achieve nature positive. Read this book, and business as usual is really no longer an option. Carlos, what would you add about how it feels how is progress today for nature positive?
They just have said it all. But, thank you, Marco, because I was just thinking about how to be nature positive. And definitely we need people on the territory, social communities, indigenous communities to make it happen. So we need a lot of education. And also, as Patricia was saying about finance, we need to accelerate the finance to the territory 4 or 5 times. We need to do it faster. We need to be faster in the next 5 years. Now, maybe we have the money and the resources, the funds, but how are we going down to the communities? It's a topic, it's an issue that we need to work in this COP, at COP30, definitely. We need to be faster. And then nature and people are so important. If we want to be nature positive, we need to be people positive. And that's one of the issues. But then, I was just thinking about, before coming to the COP, what's the point here? Because, sometimes we have a pipeline of projects, we have the funds with the different multilaterals, but then we don't have the perfect or the right tools to give that money to the right people on the territory. So I think that we need to use a lot more technology, artificial intelligence, finance, open banking, new ways of doing finance on the territory. Micro credits, micro parametric insurance, everything in micro. No, everything is big. We need micro with the communities. So going from bottom up, and of course, from top to the bottom.
Definitely, from micro to macro, macro to micro. And we're halfway through this, what has been, I think, called many times decade of action. So 5 years to go until 2030. Is there anything else that you would add in terms of really critical areas to accelerate the action we need? Patricia?
I mean, I think one thing that we haven't spoke about and that may be important that we factor in the next 5 years is how are we reacting to the geopolitical changes? And it has been incredibly, it fills me up with optimism that we still have a corporate sector that is seeing the value of nature. And I'm going to plug in a little bit right now for the coffee sector and for Ely in particular. I was with Andrea Ely last night at an event where we were talking about the importance of factoring adaptation for the coffee industry, right? As plays out for the soy industry, for the beef industry, for any industry that you look into. And the reality is that the minute that you start looking into the impact of regenerative agriculture, the positives are so many, and not only in terms of carbon and coffee yield and coffee prices and the benefits to local communities, but also for the other ecosystems that are actually dependent on these farms. And when you're talking about micro, absolutely 100%, this is the system that enables us to really go down to the hands of the people that really are impacting these lands, and that have, unfortunately, the responsibility of stewarding these services for all of us. So it is our responsibility to work hand in hand with them. And as Carlos is saying, developing tools, not only of management and regenerative agriculture practices, but financial tools that enable them to start moving into and take the risk to move into a system like regenerative. So I am hopeful that these next 5 years, the private sector is going to play an incredibly important role, but the financial sector has to start coming along.
Yes.
And that we have to design together, because it's not only about the 1.5 trillion deals. We have to start getting that to the ground, but also we have to remember that we're very easily jumping into a $4 trillion economy of cryptocurrency. And we're very, very scared of a $1 trillion economy that is nature. So let's balance things out.
So
Yes.
can I just build on Patricia,
Please.
because I completely agree. And look, the good news is that on one hand, we are the most environmentally aware generation of all times. And secondly, as I said, biodiversity is now moving away from simply the kind of reputational philanthropic space and actually being perceived as material to our own well-being and economy, etc. And thirdly, we have a goal, and the plan is very clear. It's about, number one, protect more of the nature left to the planet. Second, restore as much as we can of what we have degraded or lost. And then third, going to Patricia's point, redirect, transition nature negative practices in key sectors like agriculture, mining, forestry, fishing, infrastructure, manufacturing. These are the big ones with a big negative impact on nature, towards nature positive practices like regenerative agriculture. And the good news is that it's absolutely possible if, of course, we understand the value of it, we understand the benefits at the end of the road, but particularly if we redirect financial flows to support those transitions at the corporate level and also at the local and individual level. So that's what really needs to happen. And let's remember, we're still investing $2.5 trillion of public subsidies directly, negatively impacting nature as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 trillion. You know how much we spend on, how much was the global military expenditure last year? 2.3 trillion. So we were spending more money on a war on nature negative subsidies, than actually fighting ourselves. Like nature is the worst enemy. It's unbelievable. This is also in the book, by the way.
So we need to start drawing to a close, but to move from nature negative towards nature positive across finance and all areas, as you say. Just very briefly, Patricia and Carlos, any last closing thoughts before we draw this conversation to a close?
As a mother of twins, I would say we have to keep remembering that we have to leave this planet in better shape, nature positive, to our children, because they deserve better. And number two, what Jane Goodall used to say, there is hope. We have hope. We can actually make it happen if we work together. And that is one of the wonderful results of Nature Positive.
Definitely. Thank you, Carlos.
Oh, just so happy to be here in the Amazon raining. We have been talking about forest, about biodiversity, but then more than 6 rivers coming through the state of Belé, of Pará, going to the ocean. So also think about the blue. Oceans are very important. But my final message is that we need to work with nature, not against nature. So bringing your thoughts, we need to work together with nature.
That's the perfect summary of the conversation. And I, for one, am feeling very hopeful for what's ahead. Thank you so much to our panel, Patricia Zurita, Carlos Eduardo Correa, and Marco Lambertini. Thank you very much. That's the end of this conversation. Watch out for our next panels on the Nature Positive Dialogue. You can find details on the We Don't Have Time website on naturepositive.org. We've got a couple of great conversations still coming up this week. One on the mindset shift that needs to happen for culture and attitudes for Nature Positive, and also one soon on the Nature Positive transition. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Let's move on.